your musical idea or your musical form has to be artistically justified. I've always had a special love affair with jazz music. I have loved. It's quite an obvious choice as an improvisational classical. This is something that I was oriented towards right from my childhood. Is to imitate, and that's the way of Indian music. Is we imitate the vocals. I think it should be the agenda of educators to give their students a good idea about. It's very tough to keep ourselves motivated as live performers with no live performances around. And I'm very hopeful that we are turning the corner, and we'll soon be able to get out there and resume a normal performance live.
Hello, everybody, and today we have the amazing Sitar maestro Purbayan with us, and we are going to be talking to him about his album and a lot more fun stuff, and he's going to share a lot of things about his journey and a lot more. So let's dive straight into the interview now. Purbayan could you take us through how you started in the music industry in the first place, and take us through a little bit of your formative years?
So my journey started like any other classical musician. I was brought up in a background of my grandmother was a classical vocalist, and my father is classical sitar guru. He's a guru at the Sangeet Research Academy, Pandit Purbayan Chatterjee. And in fact, as I was saying, that's where I am right now. I've come to visit my parents from Mumbai because unfortunately we lost one of our very beloved colleagues, Shubhankar Banerjee, tabla maestro. So I had to travel yesterday. But anyway, so be that as it may, I just go back to my childhood a little bit. I started learning the sitar when I was only 5 years old, and before that, my dad started to train me in vocal music. So the background was very much, one of a strict classicism of respect for tradition, if I may, slightly slight resistivity towards maybe experimental music or other forms of music, as ironical as it sounds when I sit and give this interview, but that's how it all started. I mean, I was brought up to sort of really respect our tradition, which I still do, but then to know that I didn't know that music outside this existed. Actually, honestly, that was what it was. I knew if I had to talk about music, or if I had to think about music, this is the only thing I would think of is our tradition and my saregama and ragas and so on. And that's how it all started. It was a pretty rigorous discipline to start with. I remember, I vaguely remember. It's more stories and anecdotes that I have. When I was, maybe 5 or 6 or 7 years old, I had to be forced to sit down and practice because, kids that age, I mean, I love to play cricket, and I love to, I was watching the West Indies play with India in, those times. Clive Lloyd's West Indies Indian cricket team was visiting, and I was a big fan of Sunil Gavaskar and all of that. But gradually, I think when I was about 12 or 13, that's when I started, loving my association with music, and I heard a few recordings of Pandit Nikhil Banerjee, and that's where I think I discovered my passion for this music, and for other forms of music. I started hearing, some modern music, some modern Bengali music. That's how it started. I was a big fan of Pandit Ajoy Chakravarti, and slowly the quest continued till I was taken to my father's guru, and who later was kind enough to accept me as his disciple, Ustad Ali Akbar Khan Sahab, whose photo you see up there. This is kind of the music room. So that's a photo of my dad, and the sacred thread ceremony, the Ganda Bandhan as we call it. So those were the beginnings, and then slowly I think I started venturing into other forms of music, but I guess we let that story unfold slowly in the course of this interview.
Amazing. That's so beautifully described, your journey in a nutshell.
Yeah, I mean, this is almost like a lesson in Cressy writing. I'm trying to get, it's a very long story, of course, but I've tried to give you the gist.
Of course, yeah. I mean, it's impossible to sum it all up in just less than a minute.
Yeah, indeed,
Because you've
indeed.
been, yeah.
When it
I,
comes to fusion music, actually, like it's been appreciated much more of late, like by connoisseurs as well as artists as well as the audience. Like, so how do you feel fusion music is impacting classical form of music? And do you think it's impacting in a good way, or is it tampering with the sanctity of it?
so it's very interesting because we use the term fusion music to signify two different forms coming together, and when we use the term fusion music, we make it sound like it's something very experimental, but it isn't actually. Every kind of music that we hear today, every kind of music, including tradition itself, is usually an amalgam of two or more different elements, two or more different facets of music. For instance, this sitar, which is the instrument that I play. I happen to have one right here beside me. This instrument itself is a fusion instrument. You know why? Because there was the veena, which is the traditional old instrument, and then there was the setar, which is the Persian instrument. And while we talk about the whole Mughal invasion, and then we talk about the political aspects of it, but we have to remember that had far-reaching socio-cultural impacts, and this instrument, or our music as we have it today, even khayal, is a result of that. There was a great deal of fission, cultural fission between our Vedic elements and Persian elements coming together, and this whole Hindustani music that we call it today, and the way we have our khayal and how we play instrumental music is actually indeed fusion. So so that process is an ever continuing process, and even today we have external influences coming in, and there are influences on within the parameters of classical music, which are ever so minute, which are influencing the classical genre itself. So I am all for it, and I believe the only way that any form of culture survives is by welcoming and imbibing elements from other culture. It slowly turns into something which is its own animal, so to speak. And so there cannot be anything such as negative impact. The only thing that is needed is awareness. I think the only area where we need to be careful about is to make students of music aware about what is what. So if you are fusing two different elements of music, you need to have good knowledge of both these elements, or at least stronger. Maybe you can have stronger knowledge of one element than the other, but you need to know what it is that you're bringing together. Your musical idea or your musical form has to be artistically justifiable. So as long as you're able to do that, combining two musical forms is the best and only way forward to ensure the propagation, ensure the continuance of tradition itself.
It's wonderful. Very deep insight on what fusion is all about.
Well, look at the language we speak. I mean, look at the way, if you talk about Hindi, if you talk about Urdu, for instance, I mean, we have Arabic and we have Sanskrit and we have Urdu, which has the script is an Arabic script written like this, and then you have so many words in Urdu which are it evolves and brings this whole beautiful poetic language, and we think of it as a homogeneous whole in itself. I mean, when you think Urdu, it's one language. You don't think of a combination of two languages, and yet it is, right?
That's a very, very interesting example also.
Yeah.
So you as an artist have always been known to collaborate with like amazing artists from across the globe. So could you take us through the process of selecting artists? Is it the sound that you decide on first, on how you want the end product to be, or do you decide on the artist and then go with the flow on as to how you want your end result to be?
Well, you make it sound like a utopian world. Like I have this whole selection of artists waiting to collaborate with it. It
Well,
isn't
that's
really
what it
like that.
seems like.
No,
Because I mean,
but
you have
I'm
really collaborated with some of the biggest names like across the world. So we really want to know how and yeah, what is the
well.
process?
I'm glad that I had these opportunities, and I'm glad that especially with this album with Unbounded,
Yeah.
which we call Abad, thanks to Sufi Score, they've given me this opportunity to, every thinking musician has this wish list, okay, of people they want to make music with, and I was no different. I had the wildest wish list, and I gave it to them, and it's almost like the fairy, what is it called, the fairy dust, like when you sprinkle that magical dust. So they played that part, and it took 10 minutes, and they said we were literally on a 10-minute phone call, and I said I want to do this album, and they were like, okay, how much do you think it'll cost? And we had a little discussion about that, and within 10 minutes it was okay, that okay, we're going to do this. And of course then we only made the list bigger as we went along. The initial list was far smaller. But when you talk about genres and what is the sound that is in your head, I've always had a special love affair with jazz music. I have loved. It's quite an obvious choice as an improvisational classical musician, because both Indian classical music and jazz are improvisational, and most forms of Indian. In fact, if you look at folk also, I think our musical traditions are very abad. We are improvisational by nature. We make things up as we go, and it's the same in jazz. And yet, the interesting thing about Indian classical and jazz is that the improvisation is governed and dictated by an intricate set of rules, and there is a very well respected tradition that you have to make the framework of the improvisation around, and that's what attracts me to both these forms. And I think when it came to my past improvisation, a lot of it was destiny. I mean, I went along. I had the opportunity of meeting certain kinds of musicians, and I would collaborate with them. But with this album, certainly this was like um, the magical wish list, so to speak, and it's now come true, thanks to, as I said, thanks to Sufi Score, and thanks to all these masters, agreeing to do this. I mean, that was the other thing. Is I reached out to them, and you know. Sometimes you may encounter some sort of, but I didn't. I mean, with this album, and there are a couple of people who I have to mention. One of them is Ustad Zakir Hussain Sahib, who uh, uh, I mean, naturally, as an Indian musician, if there's a benchmark when it comes to collaborative music, then that benchmark is Ustad Zakir Hussain, because he's really pushed the envelope. I mean, there is Pandit Ravi Shankar and Ustad Zakir Hussain. These two people have really taken our music and taken it across the world and made it so kind of accessible, so relevant to other musical cultures. So when I reached out to Zakir Bhai, he not only wholeheartedly agreed to be, it was very kind and gracious of him to be a part of this project, but also to kind of help me steer and give it direction, to kind of give me many ideas, many creative artistic ideas about how I could incorporate all these various different musical colors and bring it together and make it one whole. So Zakir Bhai, like big thanks to Ustadji for guiding us, and even to people like Bela Fleck, who hardly who you will hardly see doing these kind of collaborations. I mean, they do it when it's their own collaboration, but if it weren't for like Zakir Bhai, then we wouldn't have a Bela Fleck on board, or even somebody like Antonio Sanchez. They're all multiple Grammy winners, Oscar winners, and they've uh, really have seen so much of the musical world, and yet here we are having all of these great masters under one album.
Beautiful. I mean, it's only because it's you that they also agreed to collaborate with you, right? I mean, it's not like they would collaborate with any musician. So yeah, I
Well,
think
I
your
hope once.
humility.
once I hope once the album is out and they hear the music and people hear the music, they agree to collaborate again. I guess that's the proof of the pudding is in the eating thereof.
Of course. I mean, there's no second doubts about it. We were lucky to listen to it. We got the a sneak peek of it, and mind blown. Those are the only two words I have.
Thank you so much.
And
Well,
I am generally, I just love classical music. I just love listening to, the kind of music you create. So yeah, it's my go-to.
I'm very pleased to, very pleased to hear that, and that's very encouraging to hear, because we are in this album, we are kind of exploring a territory which is. I mean, I would like to think that it's a very obvious territory, because, as I said, they're improvisational, and you would think that one would flow into the other. But I would also like to think of it as uncharted territory in some respects, because we've tried to use Western harmony as a bedrock for very Indian embellishments, and the coloring. Often the canvas is Western, and the coloring is. The motifs and the coloring are Indian. So I'm glad that you liked it, and I hope people like it.
Well, I wanted to ask about, usually lyrics are very important for a composition. Like, as a vocalist, the approach towards lyrics is one way. And a vocalist will have a pretty direct approach towards lyrics. Like, they can directly voice it out. But how do you approach lyrics, like through your sitar, like as an instrument? Because like playing an instrument and expressing lyrics might be a bit challenging than like a regular vocalist. So how do you approach the lyrical aspect of music?
I'm gonna, if I can take a couple of seconds, I'm gonna pick up the sitar and give you an example. Will that be okay? Do you have a couple of seconds?
Yes, of course.
Please,
why not?
that would be great.
Okay. Because I have it's not even my sitar, so it's my dad's sitar, but I think I can take the liberty of borrowing it without his permission. I mean, I already did in the morning, so here we go.
Absolutely.
Let me try to, because the best way you can explain these things is often by example.
Oh, we would love for that. I mean, I think even people will relate to it better.
Yeah, exactly. So, but I love your question because it's been an eternal question for me also. How to emote lyrical content on an instrument. Okay. And for this purpose, let me pick up a song which probably most of us know. Let's just pick up this song, okay? And you got to tell me which song it is, because I'm sure you'll recognize it. So, हाय मर जाएंगे हम तो लुट जाएंगे ऐसी बातें खिलाना करो जाने की जिद ना करो.
Is this based on Rag Yaman, sir?
It is totally, and it's Farida Khanamji's very famous ghazal Aaj Jani Ki Zid Na Karo. Now the thing is, when you pick up each syllable and when you pick up every ornament that is sung by a vocalist, and you can bring it to life exactly as it is, like Aaj Jani Ki Zid Na Karo. So when you are able to do that on the instrument, the listener imagines the rest, and even if you pick up like something which is very commercial, like let's just say this song. our own Kajrare by, Shankar Ehsan Loy. So the thing is, the Kajrare, the word should be clear to the listener as soon as so the stroking, the right hand, left hand technique of stroking, you have to have enough mastery over your instrument that you can bring it to life. And this is something that I'm trying to get better at but this is something that I was oriented towards right from my childhood, is to imitate. And that's the way of Indian music, is we imitate the vocals. We imitate every embellishment, every ornament is based on out of vocal music. And uh, but the other thing is this: when I started making this particular album, we had thought about it. Is that we have to make it such that the lyrical content has to be of very high quality, and yet the music has to reflect the mood of the lyrics in such a way that even somebody who doesn't understand Hindi, for example, or Urdu, for example, if you give them a translation of what the lyrics mean, if they just listen to the mood of the music, they'll immediately be there. And that's what we have endeavored with every song in this album, is to create a mood, is to create an ambience, is to create a picture just with musical notes, where whatever is being sung, or what, it may be in a foreign language or a different language. It's just like when you listen to Julio Iglesias, for instance. I mean, I don't understand French, but I'm right there. If I read the translation of the lyrics, I don't really need to understand the original poetry of the original language, but just the translation. It's a milieu. It's a mood, and I'm right there. So that's what we've endeavored in this album.
It's amazing. Thank you for the demonstration as well, sir. It's very insightful.
Pleasure.
Absolutely. So according to you, what do you think is the biggest challenge faced by a sitar player, considering you have been in this for a very, very long time?
Again, a very relevant question. I'm glad you asked this question. And this has been my endeavor to get this message across. I think there is less of an awareness, and this is throughout the world actually, about instrumental music. And having said that, it's much better in the West, because we have music conservatories teaching students the stylistic specialities of different kinds of instruments, what a bass player does, and what does a church organ do, or what does the harp player do, or what is the role of the timpani player, or what the drummer does, or what are pockets. So people are trained in conservatories, or even starting with their high school education, they're given an awareness about different musical genres, and specifically about musical instrument. They have to learn to play one instrument. Even if you're going to be a vocalist, you are taught how to play the piano or the guitar, because you have to back yourself harmonically. And I think this is something which is appallingly lacking in our own education system in India. And I didn't use the word musical education, because this should be a part of basic education. If you're learning your history books, if you're learning about history and your invasions and all, then you should learn about your culture, your music, just like we learn about different religions or different kinds of poetry. I think it should be the agenda of educators to give their students a good idea about what our music is about, what is a sitar, what is a sarangi, what is a tabla, and what is played. So I think the biggest challenge for an instrumentalist today is that they are making the music. Often when you hear a popular Bollywood song, or you hear even an piece of independent music, and it's a big hit and it has millions of views, you will see that often it is as shallow as just the mention of the actor who's acting in the music video, or at best the singer. But the people who are making the song, those who are producing it, those who are doing the music programming or production, are very much sort of behind the scenes, and they're often not at all in the public eye. And I think this is grossly unfair. And this is a challenge that I think some of us must undertake, not necessarily for ourselves, but for the next generation of instrumentalists who come along, so that they get more of the limelight, and they can. I think one of the ways of tackling this is probably learning to compose, learning to put your own repertoire out there. and which is what I've been trying to do.
Beautifully said. And I hope a lot of young musicians get to, take away from this and, implement whatever you just said. It's very, very insightful. Thank you so much for that.
You have been performing for decades, like multiple decades by now, and
Man, you
I'm
make me sound really old now. I'm not that old.
okay. I mean,
Well,
so
Just a
long.
couple of decades.
You
Couple of
started very
decades.
young, right? I mean,
Yeah, I
did.
mean, yeah, as you have started quite young, you started playing the sitar, and every artist goes through this highs and lows of their life. Like it's
Indeed.
often to get demotivated sometimes, like for some reason or the other. So how do you keep motivating yourself? Like, is there any specific activity you do or any practice that makes you consistently motivated and pursue art like a life skill?
I think it's really, again, thanks for asking this question, because this question is very relevant in current times, with COVID and the pandemic, and it's very tough to keep ourselves motivated as live performers with no live performances around. And I'm very hopeful that we are turning the corner, and we'll soon be able to get out there and resume a normal performance life. But but that is just the smaller picture. I think the larger picture is when you talk about keeping yourself inspired or motivated. Even if I had like 20 performances a month, I could be burnt out or feeling jaded. That is a risk that every busy traveling musician faces, and you have to protect yourself against that, because otherwise your music will start to be jaded. If you feel that there are no new challenges and it's the same old, I mean, you're just putting out the same. It's just the drill. You're going on stage and performing what you learned. That can get a little tedious, and can make you jaded as a performer. So I think the important thing is to look within the form and to reinvent yourself. Of course, we have a framework. I'm a classical musician. If I'm going to go and do a classical sitar concert, there's a certain frame that I have to adhere within, but I need to look within that framework, and within the parameters of that framework, you will always find, for instance, new ragas. Like I've been practicing the raga Chayanat, which is not so much heard on the sitar. So you have to give yourself little challenges, and even at a time like this, when public performances are few and far between, that's what keeps me motivated, is trying to find new repertoire, trying to create maybe a new rhythmic cycle or a new raga, or if you start looking outside of this framework also, like make an album like this, make compositions where you use two different ragas. If you're making a ghazal, you can free yourself. Again, unbounded, abad is the word. आपको आबाद होना बहुत जरूरी है, जो आपका जो दिल है, because वो एक कलाकार का दिल जो है, it is abad by its very sort of nature. It's out there. It wants to fly. So let it fly. And it's just being jaded is also being lazy. Once you start getting lazy and you're on autopilot and you're just going through the drills, then you're becoming lazy. Without realizing it, you are taking the fun of it away from yourself. So don't deprive yourself. It's of course easier said than done. We can fall into these, and we all go through phases where you're not so inspired. I mean, the writer's block, people who write face the writer's block. So I think for me, one of the easiest solutions to this is listening to a lot of different kinds of music. I always, have a lot of different music on my library on my phone, and so if you bombard your mind and your sensibility with enough musical stimuli, then eventually you're going to, it's going to impact you and bring something out of you.
Can you please name few more rare ragas which you are actually experimenting at this time?
Chayanat is one of them. I've also been working on Hamir. I've been trying to work on Hamir is not really rare, but it's rare on the sitar. I mean, so is Chayanat. It's performance. And because now it's Malhar time, so I've been working on Gaur Malhar a little bit, which is also not much heard on the sitar. Apart from this, I created sort of a new raga, which I called Sahasra Deep, which is a combination of the two ragas, Pardip and Sahana. And I put out a release also out there for people to listen to. So that's within the classical form. And outside the classical form, I always like to compose. My wife is a ghazal singer, and she's part of this album, Gayatri. She sung the song Katharsis, Sukoon. So there's a lot of ghazals going around in the house, and I'm myself a big fan of ghazals. So I've composed a few, and I keep a nice song bank in my phone.
If you can please do play us the Arohana and Avrohana of the rag you have discovered before the interview finishes. Like, I'm just curious to listen to it.
Well, right away. Here you go.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank
so
you.
Pardeep is. So this is Pardeep. And Sahana goes like this. So I have made this sort of homogeneous mix of these. I tried to make a homogeneous mix of the two. So Gama Pani Saga Ni Sada. This is Pardeep. Ma Pa Gama Da Ni Sada Ni Pa. So this is the new raga, which is called Sahasrati.
All right. So this is in connection to the previous question. So of course, the whole situation, the pandemic situation, brought the world together. So I'd like to know how you leveraged your digital platforms to connect and kind of keep your audiences engaged with the kind of content you put out. And I also saw that you did a lot of live concerts, live from home concerts with some amazing artists. I remember seeing a couple of them as well. So just tell us a bit about how you have used the platforms to your advantage during these times, because it's very new for most artists. Yeah,
it is, and especially in this country. I think the pandemic has been a great wake-up call for many of us, including myself. And interestingly enough, just pre-pandemic, I was getting to be a little more aware about how I should put out more of my music on the digital eco space and make that whole sort of ecosystem of digital music. And it's all out there. I mean, in the West, if you see the various streaming platforms and how they can generate revenue was not something that was unknown to them at all. It's been around for a while. And even I've been doing it for the last couple of years, even pre-pandemic. But I was, just beginning to approach it. And I'm very grateful actually to my very close friend, Shantanu Moitro, who is a wonderful composer. And we were sitting down and having breakfast. I remember one day, we met up somewhere and he said, Purbayan, I have to give you this piece of advice. Most classical musicians say that there is less consumption of classical music online. But have you ever thought about what the quality of music is that is being put out there, how professionally it's mixed, mastered, etc., etc.? And that got me thinking. And I did some research and I realized that I had to make a lot more good quality classical content, which I have to put up on, various streaming platforms. And this is pre-pandemic, of course. And then came the pandemic, and this was the only way you could put music out is digitally, right? I mean, there were no live concerts happening. But for me, the focus always has been on quality, the quality of at which it is recorded, the way in which it is mixed, mastered. And even towards the beginning of the pandemic, when I was doing live sessions on say, Facebook or Instagram, I would try to use a mixer, and I was learning the hacks on how to make that work. And then I think it's kind of a little bit of destiny also that I got together with Aditya, who has beautifully mixed and mastered this album. Of course, the stereo mastering has been done by the great Christian Wright at Abbey Road Studios, who is the guy who mixed Ed Sheeran's The Shape of You. We did the mastering for that. But anyway, so Aditya and myself, we got to be friends, and Mahesh Raghavan, who plays the iPad, believe it or not, and Darshan Doshi on drums, who's again part of this album. Yeah. All of these people are part of this album, but we all got together and made a band called Live and In Sync. And what we did is we used technology to create an environment where the four of us could play together in time, in sync, and we got it out, and we did a bunch of concerts like that and it got a wide amount of attention, from people, from the likes of Ustad Zakir Hussain and Jordan Rudess, again, who's part of this album. And they were like, wow, how are you guys doing this? And it went on for the better part of last year, and we learned better and better technology. But I think with the starting of this album, I learned a lot more about publishing, and with the help of Sufi Score, learned how to best leverage. And of course, they have been doing the best job of trying to create a good online buzz, so that more and more people consume, because it's often a case of people not having access. It's not about people's tastes. You have to make people's tastes by giving them the right thing at the right time. And that's where a company like Sufi Score, I think, are doing a fabulous job, because they are putting their faith in artists. And I'm certainly grateful that they put their faith in me. And my belief is that if you continue putting out the right kind of stuff, the stuff that you believe in. See, here's the thing about music or any form of art, is you have to first believe in it yourself. Your belief system has to be 100% strong. And if you keep putting out the right stuff, it's going to go and reach the right people at the right time.
Speaking of live and instruments, what made you innovate on this live instrument doppelgänger, where the traditional sound met modern sound? So we were curious about this one.
Yeah, so I called it the doppelganger of the sitar. It's another electric sitar. That's what it is, and it looks fancy. And it's the name. The actual name that I gave it is the Sitar, and it's a see-through sitar, and it lights up. And perhaps I can send you guys a video of how it looks when it lights up. If you in the dark, it's visuals more than anything else. But it's an instrument that I conceived and created in order to add a visual theatrical element when I do live performances. Very often, we play around with the lights, and it gets to a part of the music where things are quietening down, and then you want to have this very theatrical entry, with lights, colors which are embodying the music, and that's where the sitar comes in. And then I had made another instrument before this, which was a solid body electric sitar. I just wanted to have play around with things like distortion and drive, and try that on depending on the kind of soundscape I was experimenting on. But with this particular album, I chose to stick to my acoustic instrument, which for me is the most characteristic sound of the sitar, because in this album, we already had people like Jordan Rudess, and we have Michael League on the bass, who have brought so many different electric sounds. Like, for instance, Shanmukha Priya, he's used the sound of the saw synth bass, which is it's got that grunge, kind of, and then he, something like Nayi Shuruat, he's used a fat muted wave bass. So, that's where we're using text. So I have stuck to, my Indian sound, which is of the acoustic sitar. And I've tried to keep it very organic, very Indian, very true to our, flavors, very, something that reminds you of, it's like a smell that reminds you of home. So I've tried to be that element in the album where, yeah. But then in a song like Lalita, the Joyful Mother, with, the one with Bella Fleck and Ustad Zakir Hussain, and Mame Khan, Shankar Mahadevan. In that one, I've tried to play a solo, which is, not an Indian solo at all, because it's got a harmonic progression, and I'm playing, underneath that progression. So basically, every bar, the harmony changes, but the sound is still the sound of the traditional sitar, and that's the way. I think one of these. And these are all phases. I may change my outlook in the next album or whatever, but for now, I think I would like to have a sound I believe in. I believe in a very rooty, organic sound, just from a sonic point of view. of the sitar. I would like to bring my own sound of this instrument, which is, an eternal. I mean, you say sitar, and it immediately gives this visual in front of your, it's India, and it's what we. And I would like to bring that to the table in terms of this album. Maybe in another album it might be different.
So, out of all the world genres that you've explored so far, what was the most toughest genre for you to blend into? And how did you manage to overcome it?
Well, I mean, jazz is the toughest for sure because of its intellectual, the extent of its intellectual possibilities. I mean, you have the world of, if you look at syncopated jazz or chromatic jazz, it's like all the 12 notes are used in an intelligent way. And you have to make good choices in the moment. And I find that extremely difficult, extremely challenging, but also extremely beautiful. And so I would say that jazz is the most challenging genre to try and fit into, because so much music has been made in that field, and there's so much intelligence of in the songwriting. When you look at it, and especially if you work with masters like like Bela Fleck or Michael League, or people like this, and you learn by example, and you see how Zakir Bhai blends into Antonio's playing and how he plays in the pockets. So these are things that in jazz music the intellectual extent of it is. But then, having said that, sometimes the most unlikely combinations, like progressive rock, which is what Jordan Rudess's genre is. If you look at Khula Asma or the Firmament, there we've experimented with progressive rock and how he's gone between time signatures, between a 5/4 and a 4/4, and trying to bring in the sound of the sitar and sort of get into cut right into the progressive rock soundscape that Jordan brings to the table. I think that was also a big challenge, but I hope people when they listen to it, see the whole idea behind making an album like this. It should sound like one whole. It shouldn't sound like various layers of various things just put together for the heck of it. It should sound like one homogeneous mixture of genres. And let's see, time will tell.
You were awarded as best young instrumentalist of the country at a very young age of 15. So, how do you perceive awards? Like, what do awards and honors mean to you?
I think for about 5 days, you are thrilled with an award that you get. And you continue to be thrilled, maybe it depends, some people could be thrilled for 5 days. I'm thrilled for about 5 days. Some people could be thrilled for 5 months or 5 years. But I think the less the time period, the better you move on to the next thing and do it all over again. I mean, in fact, for those of us who've seen the beautiful movie Soul, which is a Disney Pixar movie, there's this moment and this guy gets to play with this amazing jazz virtuoso diva, and they do this concert and people love it. And he comes out of the club where they're performing, and then he's like, wow, he's in this surreal moment and soaking it in. And then he says, wow, I was beginning to think that my life would change after this. And then this diva tells him that, that's the thing about music is tomorrow is another day, and you just have to come back and do it all over again. And that's so true. I mean, today you might be awarded this award or that award, and tomorrow it won't matter because you have to still get on stage and play your music again, and again innovate, and again do something which touches people's hearts or reaches out to people. So I think if you can put things into proper, it's not that easy, because of course we have certain goals. And, ever since we were children, we've been looking at certain things which are aspirational. And once you get there, it's good. It's nice to take a moment and soak it all in. There's nothing wrong with it. But if you, in hindsight, it's just a little thing which is hanging on your wall, which has no relevance in what you do on stage tomorrow. So that's what you need to keep into perspective. But of course, it's not that simple, because sometimes your life may change as a result of a recognition or an award, and it is desirable that you get recognized for the good work that you're trying to do. It's important that you do, because it will bring out the best in you. It will bring out the best in you for the next album or the next thing. So that's where it is important for the powers that be to recognize the good in you and to give it. But hey, I mean, that's destiny. I mean, if you're going to be recognized, you're going to be recognized. And if you're not, you still have to keep at it and do more good work till you're recognized.
It's a fantastic reference to soul. I mean, it was really thoughtful. Thank you.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite movies ever. I mean, I don't know if you guys have seen it, but I watched it thrice.
Yeah, amazing movie. It's amazing.
Yeah. I haven't watched it yet.
You must
but
see
I
it.
shall.
Yeah, you should get on. I think it's on Disney Hotstar. So yeah, it's a Pixar movie.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Super. So, I mean, you have been doing a lot of recordings and live concerts from home. So could you talk to us a little bit about your gear setup at home? What kind of mics you use? What kind of equipment you're using at home for your home setup?
Okay, so if I were in Bombay, I could actually show this to you.
I know.
Yeah. Unfortunately,
but if you can just name like a few products that you use,
yes,
it would be
I can
very
certainly.
helpful.
So I am a very Apple guy. Like, I have the entire ecosystem. In fact, I'm so much of an Apple guy that I have the AirPods Pro and the normal AirPods. Like, I have two of everything. But anyways, so I use an Apple computer. I'm a very Apogee guy also. So I have an Apogee sound card. I have Apogee Duet. I also have a Sapphire Pro Focusrite sound card. So I have two sound cards. But I've recently discovered this amazing Apogee USB microphone called Hype Mic. If you're having a home setup and if you want to get an amazing sound with good punchy Apogee compression, then the Hype Mic is like a good way to go, because you can just plug it in, and you won't believe it. I have done recordings for ZTV, or even done one recording for which channel was it? I think it was Star, and one of the channels. I have done it on the Apogee Hype Mic, and it's a wonderful microphone to use. I have used my phone. Believe it or not, I have used. There's one recording that I did for Z Television, and there was a time crunch, and they had a deadline and they had to get it done. So I was a little cheeky and I said, okay, let me try to use my phone and my Hype Mic and record and send it to them. If they have any objections, or if they like spot any sort of glitches or anything, then I will redo it, using my Neumann microphone and all that. But they loved it, and so that's something I use a lot. I also have a Neumann KM184, I think is the model number. A pencil mic, which if for a more elaborate setup, I use that. If I'm going to use multiple mics and try to get a fat body, to the sound of the sitar, then I use that. So yeah, these are pretty much some of the things. If you're going to do a digital gig, it's good to have good lights. So good to buy a good ring light, which puts enough light on your face. But it's important to have usually two lights, one with which you can light the background up to avoid shadows. But I'm a geek also. That's the other side of me, is I'm a bit of a geek, and I love playing around with green screens. We have a nice green screen set up at home, and often me and Gayatri are squabbling about where to put all this gear. But we have this there's one corner of the music room which has a wardrobe, which is totally my domain, and I throw things in there and just shut the wardrobe. So that's my word.
Amazing. That's that's very nice. So I think you have like a proper setup, like you're good to go, like from home.
Yeah, kind of. Yes. I mean, I can sustain myself. I mean, if somebody is doing a project with me and they insist that I come into a studio, I will go into a studio. And there are some things, like for instance, on this album, which is beautifully recorded. I recorded my sitar sounds at the Seven Heaven Studios in Mumbai, and they have a beautiful setup there. I mean, the wood. I mean, there are things that you can't do at home. because they have a wooden floor and wooden walls, and the warmth of it is just, next level. And we used a ribbon mic behind my sitar. So if you notice in the intro for Sukoon, or even in the intro for Lalita, the Joyful Mother, you will hear a very fat sitar sound with a lot of resonance, and that's possible because of of the Seven Heaven Studios and their ribbon mics and all the fancy stuff that they have there.
Awesome. So we'll move on to our next segment, which is like just rapid fire. We'll ask you a few questions that you just need to answer.
Sure.
Very short. So 3 main aspects a budding sitar player must keep in mind. What would it be?
I would say, if it's a budding sitar player you're talking about, it's practice, practice, practice.
The minute you said practice, I knew what was coming at 2 and 3. An artist you would love to collaborate with, who you haven't yet with?
Jacob Collier.
Nice. I didn't expect that.
Is there any other instrument you play apart from the sitar?
I play a little bit of harmonium.
Wow.
Okay.
And
Nice.
And a little bit of tabla.
So did you
Super.
try singing ghazals or something when you play the harmonium, or just
No. This is just to make a good marriage work, because my wife sings ghazals, and this is just, I've acquired the skill set just to make our marriage work.
resourceful.
So moving away a little bit away from music, what other hobbies do you have apart from music? Apart from being a tech geek, that also is not allowed.
You got that. You got that.
Yeah.
I have a great sense of passion for the law. And I remember my grandmother I used to grill my grandmother as a kid. I used to be like, she would pick me up from the school bus. I remember when I was a very little kid. And I would ask her if there was something that she had promised me. I still remember she used to buy, I had this fascination for torch lights, pencil torches. Okay, so I had some 60 of them or 70 of them sitting around at home, which I made her buy one every other day. And if she somehow evaded this process, then I would grill the hell out of her. She would tell me things like, "Oh no, your mom's waiting for you back home. You gotta go." So I would ask her why is she waiting? Why is today special? So things like that. So she used to tell me, you should be a lawyer someday. And true to her words, I have a great passion for the law. I watch a lot of courtroom dramas, and I read about the law of different countries and how, what are depositions and what is habeas corpus. I have a great passion for it.
Interesting. I mean, you seem like a very interesting person.
And I'm sure you read a lot of
I'm going to take
Grisham
that. I'm going to
well.
take that as a compliment and say thank you.
Of course,
I'm sure
it is a compliment.
you read a lot of John Grisham books as well. I'm sure of that.
I have, at one time in my life, I have read. I think I've read them all, actually. As a matter of fact, John Grisham entire series. And believe it or not, so me and my wife, again, we have this whole, intellectual tussle. My wife is very high and mighty when it comes to literature. We're both literature students. I mean, I also did my my graduation, and I certainly started doing my master's degree, although I dropped out after. But if you ask my wife about the books she reads, she'll mention Gabriel Marquez Garcia. She will, so those are the kind of names that she will mention, and I will say John Grisham. So it's not that I've done a lot of reading in my college days, and I'm ashamed to say it, but right now the reading is almost down to zero, and you can blame Netflix and Amazon for that, but there you are. I'm just being honest. But we still have, we have a bookcase at home, and I had put a bunch of books, which were my books, and she threw them all out and brought her, Gabriel Garcia Marquez and her, Paulo Coelho's, and put them there.
What time of the day do you prefer to play your instrument?
So, I saw an interview by Ustad Zakir Hussain, which I really resonated with. And he said, if you make a big ritual out of your practice, you're going to be less and less effective at what you do. So I totally live by that. I play and pick up the sitar whenever I feel like it. And try to maintain. There's this one other story, anecdote that I must mention. And Birju Maharajji, we've done a bit of a workshop with Birju Maharajji, and where he was talking about his philosophy about music and dance and all that. And he was talking about his father, and he would often sort of compose a tukra or a parant or something. And there would be days when Birju Maharajji himself, didn't feel like practicing, because we'll all have these days when, today I'm just not in the mood. And so he said, in his chaste Hindi, he said, I would go down to the pan wala. Beta, main to pan wale ke paas chala jata tha. Aur ₹5 ka pan, ₹20 mein kharidta tha. Aur usko do parant suna deta tha. So he would recite the composition to the pan wala. And then what he said, pata hai main ye kyun karta tha? Taki gair haziri na lage. So वो दिन में जो एक बार का discipline है वो रहना चाहिए कभी ना कभी in some form. Or so I found that very. And so he said, I mean, jokingly he said, the Panwala knew more compositions eventually than many of my students, because I that's how it was, and the Panwala was right around the corner. And so I try to maintain this discipline of practicing at least once during the day. But I do it at a time when I feel like it, whenever in the day I feel like it. Sometimes it's morning, sometimes it's late night. If I want to record something, I'll just take out my instrument. It's a very tactile relationship that we have, especially with an instrument like the sitar. I mean, if you touch it, it's very like you touch it and you want to just, Hindi mein we say chhed chhad. You just strum it a little, it should feel nice, hit a note or two. And it and go from there, essentially.
Awesome. So that brings us to the end of this interview. Thank you so much for your time. Yeah, I know. I mean, I really wish we get to meet you in person someday and
absolutely
do
love
this.
to.